Thank you, David, once again. We are recording to the cloud because I see him on the screen. Jason, I will hit you back via text. Relax. It just takes me a minute, but I will hit you back to what you posed on a couple of your questions on the QT. So don't think I'm ignoring you. Good to see you on the call tonight. Good to see all of you here on the call tonight. So tonight, what we're going to do, and I'm going to adjust here to the whiteboard level here to make sure it's a clear, clean screen for you. We're going to talk about piggybacking our pass protection concept talk from the other night and zeroed in or drilled down to 30 looks. So by 30 looks, we'll start it with 30 personnel. You have 3 defensive linemen in the game. And then taking that into starting with the protection scheme itself. So it's a little cross training for all of us as defensive coaches to know what the offense is thinking and how they're going to protect your 3 down line personnel looks, and then get into hopefully some helpful nuggets and tool belt items to take with you as you go. So we're going to jump right in here. And to just keep it nice and simple, we want to concept train. So the backward Bs are your defensive linemen in the game. I'll put Bs for backers. It doesn't matter who they are, Mike or Will. So super simple to start off. When we spoke about the premise of 60 pass protection a few weeks back, we did it with the 4 looks where the offensive line is responsible for the 4 down and the middle linebacker. We're talking 30 personnel tonight. So on 60 pass protection, as this picture will show, with the back located to the offense's left of the formation, our right, the offensive line is responsible for the 3 down linemen, and now 2 mics. Still a total of 5. You either have a 4 down line look with 1 mic, or in this case, you have a 3 down line look with 2 middle linebackers, as they would call it. So as this picture shows, a nice 5-man box, this introduces us to the use of the word base. That is an S. So the base call that an offensive line will use, and typical signals that you'll see, is when the center, and these examples will now, let me get my camera angled, there we go. They will double point the 2 linebackers in question in this example. So the 2 middle linebackers is part of the box, with the assumption being we're taking the 3 down linemen, and now they'll typically raise a fist. You'll see that a lot if you watch your CFL games. They'll raise up the fist. That's the visual communication to tell their running back, hey, we're handling this interior most 5-man box. So starts off with the O-line. They're taking their 3 down and the 2 middle linebackers. And why that's important to have the visual communication to that running back, because it's what that's telling him. Running back has a list in this case. So his first is to say middle. And by middle, we're saying the 6th threat. That could be any character, another linebacker, or a secondary element. That could be any combination of safeties, halfbacks, whoever. The 6th character, so to put the concept, just to train it, I'll put it in a parentheses here. The 6th character who's not a part of that offensive line count becomes this man's first priority. And that player, wherever he occurs between the 2 C gaps, the 2 B gaps, or the 2 A gaps, he would be taken as the first priority by the tailback. So his first job is middle, meaning the character in the middle of the box. Similar to the other night when we installed the 6-man pass protection scheme, anything to my side. So to relate that, once again, the back on 60 protections located to the defense's right of the formation. So whether it be that 6th player or now any other player, let's think of a simple example. That could be a halfback or corner, an edge presence that's not part of the count by the offensive line to the side of the back. That's his next priority checklist. And then finally, much like when we first installed it a few weeks back, with scan rules. So it comes back to still giving him, just in one simple word and one simple most commonly a fist up in the air by the offensive lineman, by the center, most commonly, letting him know we're taking the first 5 of the box who we're identifying, the 3 down and the 2 verbally communicated and the 2 pointed, visually communicated linebackers. It tells the running back, I have middle, my side to scan. So just to get our juices flowing as far as what their thought process is. Am I okay here to erase? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Great. I'm just going to erase some of the verbiage. And if you need a retrace, we can make that happen for you. And there's the good news of why we record these. You can always play them back. So just to clean up the drawing now and get into the next phase. Before I get into the pressure, let me just do this. Just to relate the theme, I'm going to create now purposely a 6-man box, and to show the interrelation between a 5-man box where we just discussed the offensive line makes a base call, to where a 6-man box, which was how we originally premised off of a 4-2 shell a few weeks back on the 4-down line looks. We're going to see a lot of carryover. I won't have to write as much in terms of the verbiage, because now the offensive line has taken the 3 down on 60 pass protection, and the 2 most dangerous linebacker body type to the side of the slide, or to the zone side of the protection. It comes back to being a backside to front side protection, which leaves now, I'll put a miniature jacked up looking square for the tailback. Tailback takes his first non-declared, anything to his side to scan. So that's a little bit of a retrace and a review, but just to also relate for the offensive line, we're one and the same. And so now, meaning conceptually, so now what that does, and he'll be big on big, that puts the offensive line, in this instance, into a 4-man slide. We talked about 3-man slides when both guards were covered on those 4-down line looks a few weeks ago. This is just the paired equivalent to where you have a 3-3 look, a true 6-man box, but where now you have specifically the guard to the side of the back uncovered. In other words, he gets, by rule, borrowed into the protection. Otherwise, he's just sitting there blocking a bunch of air. So this would be a 4-man slide to the defense's left, the offense's right. Just a quick retrace there just to make sure we're cross-training that up. So back to the original 3-2 look, where we already know going into it, the offensive line has taken these 5. We're not presenting a 6-man box, nor are we presenting a 6th-man element in and around the shell. So what we're saying is we know that you know who to block, and this is where I think the fun comes in. Is it's a matter of now testing them on how are they going to block us. And so I'm going to get us into now, starting with just some half-line looks of pairing up 5-man pressure schemes when you're not trying to trick them. You're letting them know that, hey, we understand, we know you're taking us, but we're going to out-execute you. And so these I got from a few years ago. If you have access to 2016 BC Lions defense film, you'll see jersey 56 and 44, Solomon Elamimian and Adam Bighill running these nearly every second down play. So it's about execution. So what they would do is create a series of, let's just call it, I'll draw the concept to this side of snake eyes, or in other words, eye candy, that these linebackers try to create on these 2 guards to create a level effect. So we're going to send all 5. It's the offense's job to execute how to block all 5. So it's not tricking them by scheme, it's out executing them. So this first example, let's say, would be the defensive end working hard up the field. And let me do this. Let me clean that up to try to create a little more of a picture. Let your defensive end get outside a little bit. So we're talking 2nd and 7+ defense. We're not hiding anything. Hey, we're showing a 5-man box. We know the offensive line's going to take us. Try to create levels by getting that defensive end to get a hard charge up the field, get that offensive tackle to get off the line of scrimmage. And now relating this eye candy of getting this linebacker, and the more depth you give them early, believe it or not, the better in terms of freeing up the blitzer, either the blitzer or the guy that you're trying to free up. Maybe it's the, creating a penetrator looper effect. So in this first example, just for fun, you create the eye candy here on this guard to where he's going to be firmed up, sitting down on the line of scrimmage, not looking to settle back and gain depth, because you're threatening to just run right into his teeth with your linebacker coming from depth. That's how you equate a little bit or equalize some of the size disparity. So the more that you could create a level effect on this example where the offensive tackle is getting out of there, he's a large man, he's getting out to block your speed rusher off that edge, the more that you're getting this guard who's just going to hang out at the line of scrimmage, and then right at about, call it heel line, meaning heel line of the defensive line, to anywhere as you're getting into the neutral zone at the snap of the ball, as you're trying to time this out, is now create a car bomb effect for this linebacker on the inside hip of that offensive tackle. So it's creating a natural momentum to where now you're pounding that man's hip and looking to stay inside purposely and ricochet. And so we'll call that contain through the B gap. And then now, once that offensive lineman, once that offensive tackle has been knocked off, your defensive end, and I'm just drawing that to differentiate with the dotted line, as the looper is able to come on tight off of, and as the coaching point specifically is to come tight off of his buddy, not tight off of an offensive lineman. Come tight off of your buddy, and one of the two of you is going to be scot-free when executed properly. So just showing that as one side of one half-line look to where, and I'm doing this to cross-train now, you can run the exact same blitz to the other side. So as you come up with code words, for simplicity here tonight, let's utilize that as a text stunt. The only difference, it's not a defensive tackle in an end, it's your equivalent of your defensive tackle who's running hard charge gap, contained through the B gap, and running a text. So you can double text or just showing the variations that you can get into. And this is where this series of fronts that the BC Lions ran in 2016, I mean, it becomes Pandora's box here, as you'll see, hopefully. Is so now the other side, you can run the exact same thing, or you can run the paired equivalent to that, ear, that's a code word for in tackle, so an ET twist, okay? Same thought process with your linebacker on your uncovered guard. You come up, snake charm, eye candy, try to get him to where he's just sitting down, firming up at the line of scrimmage because he's going to be threatened to where you're running right down his face. And so that comes into, I'm sure that'll come up, is occasionally you need to sacrifice one of your buddies to protect these series of pressures. So every so often, send your littler guy to beeline right through the mask, right through the grill of the guard. If anything else, even if you're not going to affect that rush, you're protecting these series of pressures to where you're guaranteeing that that guard is going to sit still at the line of scrimmage. So talking execution now of the paired equivalent to the text, you have the ear game. Because keep in mind, the beauty with this is we're not having to drill down and teach our players, well, what kind of scheme? We know the scheme we're going to get. We're going to get 5-on-5. We're not worried about the back, so you're not having to get into the if this or then that. We know the offensive tackle is responsible for you. We know this guard is responsible for you on a 3-2 configuration. So there's no secrets or shocks. It's more so now the how component, how to execute it. So coming inside, and I purposely draw just to make sure not only we want to keep that guard on the line of scrimmage, but also draw him to the A gap. Draw him to come inside as though maybe you're threatening a potential pick game on your center, which I'll get to shortly. Meanwhile, the end, the beauty of the teaching, I find, is how you teach your end of text is identical to how you teach your end, the beginning point of your end on the ear twist, on the ET equivalent. You still want to hard charge up the field. You still want to get the offensive tackle to get off the line of scrimmage. You want to create levels between the tackle and the guard. So now because it's the paired equivalent. I'm going to be first as the defensive end. So I'm going to be hard up the field. It's not so much counting steps. It's just getting a feel for, it may be 5 steps. It may be 6 steps, depends on your dude. But I want to get up the field, get that tackle to kick out to me. And then I'm snapping hard. I'm utilizing some type of a club counter move, some type of a cross move across his face to now come underneath as the penetrator. And then now, and by hopefully with this, bringing that tackle back to where the offensive line as it originates gets condensed. The entire edge gets condensed based on this man's movement, and to where now, in a similar coaching point, the backer, who's now the looper equivalent, waits for his buddy's color to pass. Once he's invited that guard to come down with him, create some space, and then illustrating here with that dotted line that we would prefer to have contained, working more on a straight line rather than creating I call them Cadillac turns that we don't want most commonly. And keep in mind, we haven't even talked about this dude, just in these initial simple examples where one side's running a text, one side's running an ear. You could create your own lingo or nicknames for where you want to have double text, double ear, text to one side, ear to the other. And so keeping that in mind, we have freed up as a one-on-one rusher, your zero technique, your nose player, one-on-one with the center on the island. So that is just another added benefit to what you get here with just this one example. Are we so far so good? Dave and coaches, any, okay, able to erase? Okay, beautiful. And the main point right prior to erasing is text to one side, ear to the other, double tap. I mean, to what an offense scouts you, that already becomes 6, 7, maybe 8 different looks. But all we're doing is we're running the same play. We just do it over and over and over again, and you're working timing. You could get reps like a champ on this every day in practice on trash cans to where you're not beating each other up. I mean, the amount of speed that you can generate because your guys create the muscle memory to where they could just turn their brains off and they're just cutting it loose. It's a beautiful thing. So to give you some.
Hey, Chef.
Yes.
How often would you run a double ear game?
How often?
Yeah. Or is that something that you would try to avoid?
Not necessarily avoiding it. I like to think of these series of pressures as almost a catalog. In other words, I want to pull the file folder off of the catalog, off of the cabinet, and just make sure we're at least hitting, each of these as we go. Typical rule of thumb, and where you're coaching your players, the more freedom you give your players is to say, hey, look, we want to turn it on to you guys understand we're running, let's use a word. Let's say the word stack, just for simple. It could mean nothing to any of us, just for this example. We're running our series of stack pressures. It's five-man pressure looks, 3-2 configurations that get into where it's 5-man pressures. The rule of thumb, maybe to help relate your question, Dave, is, hey, just make sure you don't go falling into running double text 3 times in a row. It starts to lose its luster off the star. So wouldn't say never. Want to at least run it once amongst the series of looks. Now to include your nose guard, your zero technique player, to make sure he's not feeling all if he's on the island with the center. Now let's keep it to where it becomes a series of 3-man games in nose. So for this instance, hey, look, we're going to create the junk up inside. So you just tell your ends, hey, stay out of our way. Bottom line, your automatic contain rushers, don't mistake the theme that all I am is just a contain rusher. You're rushing to win. Just keep in mind, keep enough of an awareness that I don't want to be, unless I absolutely have to because I'm getting washed above the quarterback, I want to stay leery of doing a counter move or kind of an ice pick spin move inside, especially early, because this is where now we're going to create the junk on these guys. So same thing, contain rush, rush to win, but stay out of the way. So now any combination, so what I'll do purposely is hard line, break up the line of the second player, and then dot the third line. Now you're getting into a series of 3-man looks. So the most simple one here, you're still getting what I find the bang for your buck is the same initial pre and at the snap look of your 2 bubble Mike linebackers who the offensive line is going to account for anyway because you're only showing a 5-man box. This is beautiful. So you're gaining rep equity time and time again. You're getting into that snake charming, eye candy, get these dudes eyeballing you, okay? And so now, let's just say, I'm going to purposely draw that dotted line to where we want to get that guard initially, still at the line of scrimmage, but out of the way to create working room for my buddies to operate. And so now, coming through here, let's say I'm going to go these 2 first as the first penetrators and him as the final looper. The more I create space early, the more space I'm going to have as the guy to hopefully be freed up at the end if it's not one of my 2 buddies. So now, I didn't have to break up that line there. We'll get to somewhere we do, but super simple. This is not rocket science, which is right up my alley. Now send the nose. You create tag words. Okay, Liz. And I'm just brainstorming. I'm not, I'm just brainstorming here just to keep the convo rolling. Liz, L, 3 letters. There's 3 of you inside. The first 2 of you are working to the left, and then the final looper is coming around, hopefully scot-free. And the whole theme and the coaching point to this is the more you get this guard out of the way early, your nose player has working room to operate and rush to win on the edge of the center, on his snap hand most commonly. And then now what you're telling this second player is you're initially coming down, head up to the guard, and then at the snap, you're not trying to be a tape measurer, but the more space you have at the snap to where you have some room to operate and really dive in there, not just dive as it's drawn fat to the A-gap, drawn and use the hip of the center as a homing device. Go find that hip of the center, because the more you find him, the more that guard has to come down to come and get you, because that's his job. And the more now, in a similar fashion to the TE and ET twists, your dotted line, your final loop element, is coming in a tightened fashion and not a roundabout or a Cadillac, if you will. That would be Liz. We can keep the contain rushers the same. I'll just draw up a clean look here for our interior core. All you have now, quickly, if that's Liz, all Rip is the opposite. Two going to the right, looper coming around to the left. But keep in mind, so far we've kept it very simple, and that there's beauty behind that. The theme being that you really want to be able to transfer from yourselves to your players is it's all in the how. It's definitely not a what issue. So you think in terms of just quick sidebar of what, how, and why. The more you can dispense your information and your plays and your concepts to your players, first things first is what to do. Next is how to do it. And the more you get your players understanding why you're doing it, that's when you're really hitting your PhD level as a defensive coach or any coach, any side of the ball that you're working on. I say that to make the point of the offensive line coach is sitting here going like, oh, all they're doing is sending two and wrapping the third. The magic in these series of pressures is all in the how. It's far from the what. There is no major, how should we say, major aha moment from a scheme standpoint. We know they have 5. We're bringing 5. We know they're going to account for all of us. It's now the execution of how we accomplish it. So you got text, double text, text ear, ear text, double ear, Liz and Rip. The fun ones, keeping it tied into these interior three, keeping your contained rushers to the outside. Once again, rush to win, stay out of the way. Now, the real fun happens. Most commonly, we like sending the nose player to the snap hand, the snap shoulder of the center. Obviously, pair it to your game plan if you're facing a lefty, but most centers, like quarterbacks, are righties. So send him to the snap hand. You still got your snake charm, eye candy guys coming up inside, getting these guards to really hunker down because you've threatened once every blue moon where you're just going to dive those guys right down, right between their teeth, right between their two eyeballs, keeping them honest that not every time are you just simply running one of these pressures and these twists. You're going to come through and try to tee off on these guys, almost make an investment, even though it's at the expense of maybe an outcome on one play. So now you get into, equivalent words. We just talked Liz and Rip. You can combo Liz and Rip. You can call it Liz X. But now, just the idea being, now you're creating the cross effect with these two. Nose is going to the snap hand, snake charm, and then now, purposely, this is where I get into the broken line for the second player. Broken line for the second player, dotted line for the third player. And the real key coaching point here, when you're getting into the cross element of the two linebacker types, that dotted line, he's the ultimate fixer. He may end up right off the second player, as this drawing shows, where he's right in the middle. He might end up all the way around. The beauty is he's getting time bought. We're hoping sure that he's freed up. But if we're really executing, if we're getting this guard, the more that you could sell head up to even the outside half of the guard to free up your nose player to have room to operate, the more you're creating the potential of a cavity, and the more you're creating the potential also for this dotted line, this third player in this example, to where I might fit off my second player, I might fit up off my very first player, I might see the quarterback flush and somehow try to find somewhere, some kind of, because keep in mind, you've got double head contained, so he should be able to get outside. But if he tries to find some leeway, I'm an ultimate fixer. I'm the natural benefactor of this play. So there's cross to one side. We all could see the paired equivalent here. Nose this way, same thing. Snake charm, eye candy, boom. He's second. And again, he's third, and I'm dotting it purposely where he's third to where I see daylight, where I see the quarterback get flushed to. You got to think, both ends are contained. We got immediate push up the pocket because we've gotten the guards out of the way to let your middle player at least have a free run and have an opportunity to work the edge of that center. And then now you're fixing it off of your first two penetrators in front of you. Pairs now where you're getting true combos, just to give examples. Case in point, let's cut this side in half. You guys are running a 3-man game. You two over here are running a 2-man game. Let's put ear over here. And then for fun, right here, for simplicity tonight, without getting into code words, all that is big text. You got the equivalent of a TE, but now you got two dudes who are creating that hard vertical penetration. And then your edge player, hard up the field, give your buddies room to operate. And in a similar coaching theme to a moment ago with those cross blitzes, this player becomes a natural fixer. Quarterback should have no way to go to your side. His only escape is up the middle. You should be walking right into your delivery sacks and your strip sacks, potentially. So using this as an example here before I erase and create a new one, hopefully we're starting to see where, for us, we're doing the same thing with modifications, but in the end, we're sending 5 dudes. We know the blocking scheme is going to be a base protection because we've given them a base look. And now it's just about us executing the how of the implementing the techniques and the tactics. So purposely using this example, still giving the center the snap shoulder of the, or zero technique, the snap shoulder of the center. Purposely here, if I'm going to run a text with my backer, the same coaching point that we make that applies to the ends, an ear or an ET should look just like a TE. Shouldn't matter. I'm hard up the field. I'm getting the tackle off levels. We want to coach these dudes in a similar fashion, as you see here. Your snake charming, eye candy, look to hard inside initially to get the guard to be aware of, hey, he could be coming inside, hard penetrating the A gap. This player's running ear, but I'm setting this one. This is where I think we could have a lot of fun. This dude's coming in, setting up inside to then spike hard with the same coaching point we made earlier on pinning the hip, pounding the hip of the inside half of that tackle, and then freeing up your buddy. And with the whole theme being, once again, coaches, create levels of the offensive line. You know, all 5 of them, by their rule or their what, are assigned to block you. They know who to block, just like we know that they know who to block. It's a matter now of out executing them and creating the how-tos and the effect of the tactics. Coach Jackson, any coaches, questions? As I take a breath of oxygen here, I've been Jay Leno monologuing y'all.
Oh, this is good. If you want to keep, I think this is pretty.
Coach, you can either keep going, or if you want to get into some of those simulated pressers that we talked about, you can start to hit that up.
Sure. Before I get into another topic area, is there anything unclear? Is there anything that needs more diligence or drilling down? I mean, didn't show necessarily every potential picture or literal drawing, but you're seeing where it becomes Pandora's box, hopefully. That's my goal with just these 5-man pressures.
Yeah, Shep, like we got a couple guys sitting here and we were just talking ourselves. Say, for instance, on your last example or any of your eats that you ran there, if that end gets a look where the tackle doesn't overset him or doesn't get, stays inside, is he still going to stubbornly try to cross his face, or will they abort that and that's where quadrants come in, or how do you teach that?
Great question. Great question. So just because we show them a 3-2 look, obviously doesn't mean all they have to do is base the protection. So maybe drilling it down to your question, meaning maybe here, well, maybe even better, you see this more in the States, where they're going to full line slide. Is that maybe a more apt example to try to relate it? Let me go to first things first. Let me answer your question. If I'm hard up the field and for whatever reason the tackle's not coming out to block me, and I have, it's one of those it's too good to be true moments, like nobody's blocking me. If I'm aware and I don't see any threat of a screen, right, meaning an extra deep drop of the quarterback, any kind of equivalent eye candy of a running back, coming out doing a horrible job to block me and basically let me do my job. If I don't see a tackle coming out to me, yes, cut it loose, abort. They might have screwed up. And hey, You're not going to complain about that. I personally haven't necessarily seen where the defensive end body type in these examples is not getting due respect by the offensive tackle.
Yeah, I guess what we were talking about, not so much literally as he's not, the tackle's not blocking him, but just not oversetting. He's staying in good position, inside leverage, you know, kind of a normal set where, for example, if there was no game on, the end might not choose an inside rush. It's a better look for an outside rush.
Yeah.
If you get a set like that by the tackle, would you still stubbornly do it or not?
I got you. Yes. If you got it turned on, if you have a true game turned on, for example, with your linebacker in these examples, stay with it. Instead of stubbornly getting across his face, the coaching point we would make is turn it into 100% a press and control bull rush at that point. In the end, still get the edge condensed for your buddy who's going to be the design looper. Cool. So we've gotten enough of those. Let me show as a sidebar here within our three-man looks where now you can show, I think it has good interrelation here. Let's stay with the theme of you're showing the snake charm eye candy of your two bubble linebackers. Purposely locate the side of the back. And then this series of plays, let's call it for simplicity, Sam Go. Can we all see that? Sam Go, not literal Sam necessarily, just telling us that the non-linebacker type, the non-linebacker element outside of the count to the side of the back come. And the whole theme being, we're going to show that we're getting into our series of pressures that we've just discussed, but then drop out. And ultimately, create a four-man pass rush, a pressure look. It's not literally pressure because we're only sending 4 total, but we're getting a pressure effect because by rule, if we recall to the beginning, base call, R5 for your 5, tells me as the back, I have middle, my side to scan. This simple example, it doesn't matter if it's to the field or to the boundary. So pair your partners, meaning dime or Sam linebacker to the field in that example with weak side halfback into the boundary. And they're just cluing on who's to the side, you know, what side is the back on? Is he to me or away from me? And in this example, if he's to me, I'm coming. And in a similar theme to the original set of pressure series, I know he's going to block me. That's great. But with a four-man rush, we've negated checkdowns. We've negated empty flare routes immediately. The back has to stay in to protect. I should say most specifically, takes checkdowns away. So which buys time and buys leeway for your 2 middle linebackers to get gone, get dropping out of there. Don't have any fear of, well, what happens if I stay too long on any kind of vertical seam of a number 2, trying to wall that player and get and distort his route or get depth if something can happen in the checkdown area. The checkdown's off the table, because the back's going to get used up in the protection. And the beauty with that, I'm all about this kind of math, is we sent 4, but we kept 6 in to block. I like that kind of math. Now taking it a step further, keeping in mind what we discussed a few weeks back, because you're cross-training all 3 levels of your defense, going back to that super simple will go example from a few weeks ago, getting this effect on this sample to this half line look where, well, in this case, the tackle's going to come down with me. I'm leaving the edge available for my buddy, for my Sam or my halfback, whoever, my secondary, third level element, who's going to get blocked by the back because he has to by rule. And I have my job, or I have my what if. If the back blocks me, scream right now. Come across his face, take that awkward, jacked up looking angle and get to the feet of the quarterback and bring him with you. And then now, as a late after effect, once I've gotten into my rush, there's the potential for that natural, not non-predetermined, but that natural, meaning my buddy who's coming like a bat out of hell with speed, and he's knifing this thing, trying to find the feet of the quarterback. Once I see my buddy's color pass, work right off of him. And natural. Am I good to clean up? Okay. Speak up if not. Okay.
Yeah, we're good there, except there's a question that comes in about these sim pressures versus a pistol look.
Okay. You got pistol, so you don't get a clear-cut read of, well, should it be the Sam or should it be the weak half coming? Great question. First of all, if you're getting a steady diet of pistol, probably want to stay away from back-oriented looks or back-oriented pressure or pressure look-alike schemes. But hey, they haven't shown it. They're coming out. They're unveiling something new. Oh, shoot. What do we do? So have a default in your game plan would be our thought process. Have the default being, hey, if they show us something we haven't seen and they line up in the pistol alignment, we'll switch and I'll put this field left. Hey, weak side halfback, just go take it and we'll live to fight another down in this example. So if that's the case, to where now potentially you're going to get, because this is a sidebar quickly here. They line up in pistol to run 61 protection, the mirrored opposite look. We set the weak halfback on this example. We had strength or field to the left because of their rules where we're basing, well, a couple things. Let's get the drawing fully put in. They'll tell you, or they'll tell their players, hey, we can pick this up. They're only sending 2 of these 3 most dangerous blockers because we dropped these 2 out. So it's a good pause button for a moment. What my train of thought was going to say is, hey, no big whoop. They get it blocked. We're still rushing 4. He still has to stay in initially, but we should be able to create some type of a natural along the line, somewhere between these 2, or potentially he'll stay to the edge in this case. But before I even go there, that's your worst case scenario. Because once again, if you're operating in the how bucket of what, how, and why, you're not giving it away. Snake charm, eye candy guys. Snake charm, eye candy guys are still given that appearance to draw the attention and keep that guard on the level of the line of scrimmage. Hopefully, right? If we're drilling our guys down. So we should still, hopefully, the thought process from our vantage point is this guard is still wasted. He's going to obviously free up once at the snap of the ball you drop out. I would maintain if we're hitting this on time and we're hitting it running, their pistol and we happen to be wrong, meaning the conceptual zone side of the protection is where we send our 4th element. I would maintain, because of the look we're giving and the amount of times we've run this to now create a change-up or a look-alike, I'm still guessing that I would anticipate the back still being alert to having to scan to that. Hopefully, I was a long-winded response. Hopefully that answers your question. Just trying to give you as much depth and detail there because it's a great question. Going back though, have a fail safe. Hey, fellas, if they show us pistol here, which the report tells us they've done less than 15% of the time, but if they do, hey, turn it on with the weak side hammer, the weak side halfback, and we'll live to fight another day. If they block it, they block it. We'll move on to the next. A quick sidebars. I see some of you with your eyes down, jotting down some notes. Just a quick segue or in between talking pressure and pressure lookalike. A quick note as another changeup for when you want to rush only 3. Let's take it to second and extra long, second and over 10. This just got me, just because I got reminded of it recently from the fellow who was tied to the hip with the old days, the prior decade with Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, John Tierlake and his son Bill. Shoot. Three-man rush, you're ultimately, hey, we're playing the sticks, we're playing coverage. Shoot, second and 10 plus, more like second 15. This is just a sidebar quickly. This right here, don't forget about just your simple 3-man rush. In other words, high-low. And to paint the picture, all you got to do is YouTube it. Find Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, Indianapolis Colts, circa 2005 to 2012, anywhere in between. One of the buddies would purposely rush high, get gone, full speed, get above the quarterback. The launch point 7 yards, go rush to 9, purposely. Your buddy opposite you, hey, the launch point 7, I want you coming across his feet as though he's standing at the 5-yard line from the line of scrimmage. Hardcore, ultra. Get in front of his path and create a color barrier, a wash of color. If we're visualizing the quarterback, I'm dropping into my drop. I'm thinking, great, they're going to drop off play coverage. Awesome. And I see a wash occur in front of me. Thought process being, I should get flushed. I should get off my spot. And then hopefully 1 of 2 things are happening. And then we'll add the third player in a moment. Dwight Freeney had so many garbage, not only garbage sacks, but garbage strip sacks, like sack fumbles, like monster De Niro plays, just off this concept. Hey, Mathis, you go low, I'm going up high, and I'm raking this sucker. He's not going to see it coming. He's working away from his throwing hand. Good night. Okay? And then pairing in the third element to protect that initial bubble. You want to send your third player toward the throwing hand. So don't go getting collapsed. But the idea being you could even shade him opposite of where he's going to end up, or to the side where he's going to end up, and have him create a path to where he's just protecting against, for whatever, something goofy happening, quarterback taking it and wanting to occur with the football in this fashion. At least you're giving yourself added protection to something random like that. But the idea being, he's going to come, occupy space and a couple men, bring the center with him and occupy up that guard. Give even more space to let his buddy operate. And then the dotted line being, he's the secondary fixer if he's not busy strip sacking the guy. Quarterback feels that pressure, he'll naturally want to occur downhill into a free player. So I just give that as a nice, hopefully nice topic segue here into next thoughts. Okay, good. Anything specific that anyone wants before I dive into a another series or chain of topics.
We just kind of had the same type of questions, Coach. If you have something, I know you touched on it already, but if you have something specific when you're expecting pistol, right? Do you have something? I know you said you default by sending the Will or the weak side halfback or outside linebacker, but is there anything else in particular you like for simulated pressures when you might expect pistol?
Sure. Let's go here. So we're staying in 3 down personnel, correct? So now, keeping the rules of the protection scheme that we've discussed intact, create a 6-man box. So you're still in second and long. They're being stubborn to say, hey, we're showing pistol, so your ultra edge pressures or pressure lookalikes, you're not going to be able to get a beat on where our man side or zone side of the protection is. Fine, so be it. We'll dictate it for you. Okay, so now by lining up, taking the equivalent of a 3-2 configuration, and now just bringing your down lineman inside and walking your 2 linebackers up to each edge with your 6th element. So I put him as an X. It's your choice. If you're 3-3 personnel, that's your 3rd linebacker. If you're 3-2 personnel, that's your extra dime. That could be your penny player, let's call it, for fun. One or the other, though. Now we're putting the onus back on them to be dialed in and correct. Because if it's by design, 61 protection, where this would be his location or his side, well, now you're putting them into an awful flip a coin fashion by having the 6th player located in and around the box in a not necessarily a first level, but in a threatening position where his rule says, hey, I have middle my side to scan. Well, now with some pre-snap eye candy, once again, and I'll dot the paired equivalent, you rush your other players. You rush your other players as a simple theme. I'm not going to draw it in. You could rush all 5, make it a true 6-man pressure with an A-gap insert, and just make sure you're working with your nose player. Tell him opposite or pat the butt cheek that you want him to go so he stays out of your way. But either way it goes, even if we say we picked wrong or they lucked into being correct and we have the dotted line, that's a tough dimension to occur from behind the quarterback, get to my landmark or my side of responsibility, and have the potential of immediate opposite color jersey in my grill. This is a sidebar for coaches who are maybe on tonight who are offensively trained. I understand why pistol has some merit from your side of it and has benefit because you're taking away running back oriented pressures or running back oriented fronts. I understand that, but keep in mind versus stubborn enough defensive coaches who are going to say, well, we're still a pressure based team and we're going to still make you be a blocker. From pistol, if you visualize with me, I got the quarterback standing right in front of me. So I'm not necessarily seeing in this example where all this eye candy is happening from. I'm not seeing my responsibility. I know I've been drilled down a ton. I've been jackhammered beaten over my head with my rules of middle my side to scan. But if I'm not seeing it come, and there's the potential that he might be even in the worst case for us defense, even if he's in my grill to my side, what really sucks is if he happens to occur opposite. And me as the tailback, I'm starting off to the right of my quarterback and then having to cross his face. I mean, it could be, hopefully you're seeing with me, just even reviewing this, that could be more problematic than helpful. from the offense's point of view. And that's whether, and that's independent of even if you're executing it defensively clean and, you know, winning your one-on-ones and, you know, getting your matchups like you want them. Sidebar to that, hopefully that's answering the questions, and please chime in as need be. This picture also sets you up now where now you've bought your 5 offensive linemen by rule. Let's keep this player. So piggybacking a little bit, how can you get the same effect of your Sam Go example, either your weak side halfback or your front side dime off the edge to the side of the back? Well, now get this dude right up the pipe, right up the A gap. Let's keep the hard line. So I'll erase this one. Send your nose opposite. Now, get your 2 droppers from a different dimension. Key coaching point, keep it related to the how. Get just a, not super hardcore, because obviously you have your coverage responsibility, but at least get a couple steps up the field. The more of a widened alignment, the more you can get just a couple steps, at least a jab, just to create some space before you drop out of there, to let your pound the hip pin guys contain through the B gap. And now you're still getting bang for our buck. I like this kind of math, defensive coaches. Hopefully you join me on this. 1, 2, 3, 4 rushers, commanding 6, getting droppers that the quarterback's not necessarily anticipating from that dimension, with the potential of immediate right up the midline A-gap pressure, if not a destroyed play. Hopefully that is relating a little bit, going back a few pictures and drawings and topics ago. Some good stuff. Good questions, coaches. I love it. Good there?
Yeah, that's great, Shep. Another question is, and you're going to earn your money tonight, your imaginary money. We're paying you to come on here and dirty up that whiteboard. But
hey, I'm in the U.S. That's even better.
Do you have anything in particular as far as pressures or simulated pressures relative to receiver sets as opposed to protection? So, you know, if you get 3x2, you like this. If you get 2x3, you like that, or by 1 or 1 by.
Haven't really given a ton of thought to the 32 or 23 sets. I think whoever's asking that question may be onto something to really marry up what I'm sure is the you know, your defensive backs coach's main weekly tasks and responsibilities of, you know, depth, or not depths, but alignments, splits, and pairing that to what routes you're getting out of 32 and 23. Where I fall into is either pre-aligned or motion to 41 to 4x1, then automaticing, I know that's not a word, but creating an automatic for, let's say, your weak side halfback, or better yet, your free safety. So maybe just to put a, with the field being left, let's say, does not matter where the back is, does not matter what protection it is. So let's put it, keep the paired theme of our three down front looks. And I'll purposely go here with the free safety. Let's say they're in 32 to start, motion to 41. So I'll put it here. Hopefully we're seeing all those characters here. We got a free and a halfback coach. Okay, perfect. Have it paired. I think there might be something to this. Having it paired between your free safety and your weak side halfback, particularly on motion to 41. So 32, motion to 41. And however you want to tag your words, let's call it hammer for the halfback and flood for the free safety. To each their own. But triggering and turning on one of these guys, not both, one of these guys based on that motion to where it's not necessarily going to free them up, but it's another look that they got to deal with for their protection scheme. And it's definitely buys him into the protection. So relating the themes of the night, we're in a 3-down line look. This happens to be 3-2. Okay, great. Typically, you're going to either rock your safeties, right? Half becomes free, free becomes insert player or cover down player to number 4, or you're traveling your halfback. The more you have your players, the more you can teach concepts where you travel your halfback but still play zone coverages. That's a whole another topic for another night. Well, let's just keep this example here. Travel the halfback, but that motion triggers the free safety to come downhill and spike the A-gap. I think there's some value to that. Along the lines of, it's still a 4-man rush, should ultimately keep the tailback into protection. You're still playing your complex of coverage, 4-man rush, 8-drop coverage, but you're taking away check down. So really you're buying some leeway for your 2 bubble linebackers to be able to, drop, like, beat it, fellas, get gone. Go do what you do. Something to consider. But no, to the original question, that gives me some pause and, thought to ponder for 32 and 23 sets, particularly. The reason I haven't dived into that is I think, especially in the Canadian rules game, there's so many, as you all well know, variations. They show motion, they retrace and come back. They begin motion with 2, but only return 1 back. So most commonly, and this isn't something that we majored in by any means, but just it is a tool belt item, but kept it specific to 41. Either static 4x1 or, where I think you can have some juice to it is motion to 4x1. Might be something there. Is now a good time, Dave, to give you that United States banking account information?
I'm not sure how much you're going to like that exchange rate.
Yeah. So feel free to copy paste. Feel free to make it hopefully better. So this is something where, and I purposely put in the characters here only to differentiate. We still got our defensive line body types or the backward Bs. So this is specifically 3-3 personnel. Still thinking second and long. You're showing a 6-up look. It's 1 safety defense or 1 safety shell. So meaning the quarterback's not sitting here thinking that he has to get the ball out in 1.5 seconds. It's not cover 0. Something to this though. You show a steady diet of pressure. You're a pressure team. You're showing a bunch of junk, any combination, if not all of the above of what we've discussed. Well, hey, hopefully you're drawing in bomber protection. So I'll get to that element here in just a moment. But on the specifics of the 6-up look and the differentiation of your characters, same thing. You're going to get 1 of 2 protection schemes. So purposely putting the back located here and piggybacking the good questions asked earlier about what if they're stubborn to be a pistol team. Case in point, why you want to teach, I would advise teaching tool belt items to all 3 levels of your defense of, do I get if I'm running an edge pressure, going back to a few weeks ago, if I have an edge pressure and I don't rush the passer for a living, I see an offensive tackle block me, stay outside. I become a contain rusher using the quadrants that Coach has talked about in his clinics. If the offensive tackle doesn't block me, it's because the running back's blocking me. Scream. Scream across his feet, step on his toes, get to the feet of the quarterback. Awesome. So you could relate those now as you get into both pressure, full 6-man pressure, or in this case, a look-alike. We're rushing 5. We're going to drop out by design a linebacker character to the side of the back. And whatever you have it go up to, you can.
We always.
Sorry, I had trouble hearing you. We good? I think there was somebody trying to ask a question maybe, or nope, good?
They'll pipe up again if there's a question, Coach.
Good deal. Let's drop the will out, pair it to the side of the back, drop him out. And so now this guy's going to see one of 2 blocks. Most commonly to this look, because you've loaded your defensive line body types, there's only 3 of them, but 2 of the 3 are on this side of the center. Should be anticipating slide, potentially full line slide. Great. Because if this dude disappears, my line is no longer like this. My line is going to look like this, which makes this guy very uncomfortable. And that's even if he does accomplish his job, which is to block you, that's still an uncomfortable task if they're sliding, which means he's the dude who has to block you. They're not going to assign a running back to block a big man. That's part 1. Part 2, which really creates it to be uncomfortable for now this dude, is the guy he's responsible for. So if we visualize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 O-linemen to block these 5. Full line slide. Awesome. Very, very sound thought process in principle. It's now on us as defensive coaches to know that. Better yet, get our players to know that. And then next level, hopefully elite level, is get your players to out-how them. Meaning, I know what we're doing. I know what they're going to do. How we do it, it doesn't matter that they know what we're up to. We're going to out-execute them. So this player working a thick, hard, middle linebacker body type, snap shoulder. So you're seeing the theme, snap shoulder to the center, more often than not. Makes it very difficult for him. We already discussed how it's very difficult for him because of the trajectory that we're going on. Next phase, if you've gotten to the snap shoulder, the center, he's miserable because he has a job to do. I have to block my dude. More importantly, I have a job to do. I got to block my dude. And I want to be clear, for starters, it's a full line slide with a midline launch point. I know in Canada you can get both a midline launch point and a moving launch point. I call it CFL slide to differentiate. But whether you're midline or a moving target launch point, I know it sounds great from the offensive line coach's perspective that, hey, we got our numbers, we got our 5 dudes, let's just get elephants on a parade and just wash them by and just create a nice pocket. But how we're executing this makes it very difficult to where we as a defense, we break the protection or we disrupt or distort the slide is what our goal is. So where now, keep a contained rusher opposite because we got some junk going on inside. So, hey, contain rush, awesome, okay? Key being here, this player. We already discussed the middle linebacker has a great task. Corrupt the snap shoulder of the center and get vertical. Start disrupting that slide before it ever gets started. You as a head up 2 technique on that guard, pile drive this guy. Straight up Undertaker Kane, WWE, old school, 20 years ago. Tombstone pile drive this dude into the backfield, late, taking him and then working late. And I emphasize late. If you just stay on a straight line, you've done your part. But late, work to the outside because now you're freeing up your buddy who's going to come right off of your hip pocket. And I draw both the hard line and specifically, you're seeing the theme, the dotted line, that he becomes your natural fix guy off of this great wash that's occurring to the, starting with the snap shoulder of the center, and then he becoming a fixer. This is where now you're taking the next step, the next element of those early pressures, those 3-2 configurations of we're not creating any brain power shortage for the offensive line. Hey, there's 5 of us. We know there's 5 of you. Now it's just about out executing. This should also create a little bit of a what issue for the O-line. We've only just discussed the one protection. Full line slide, because there's more of our big men than there's more of our big men. Let me rephrase that. More of our big men to this side of the center. So it makes sense. Hey, bring them on over. Keep the back opposite. Well, now we're wasting the back because we have a covered player and we're making hardcore stress on this player, and this player. And meanwhile, this guy's getting tombstone like Undertaker and Kane back in the day in WWE. Creating a free player. I'll come back to the protection equivalent in just a moment. Why I draw this in is this is just a loose general rule of thumb 411. It's not related specific to this pressure, but just generally speaking, you have any non-pressure drop 8 coverage all the way up to your 5, 6, however many man pressure with your combination of coverages behind it. Rule of thumb, they bring a bomber in to protect the guy who's lined up, the guy who's his cover down responsibility. Go get him right now. There's no more check down. There's no more route. It distorts your coverage, so make sure you're not just being hasty or non-thoughtful with this. Pair it to your coverage, pair it to your shell. But my goodness, especially in a pressure scheme, if you're just going to play man, go take him right now. Not literal, but go tackle him, for heaven's sakes. Go get him out of the picture. There's no more check down. There's no more added blocker to help the protection. He's nullified. It's as if you just erased him off the screen. That's just a sidebar tool. Relating back to this pressure that we designed, okay, what's the opposite look? If they're not going to full line slide and give the running back to the non-big man body type on the edge, the only other option they have, as we've already discussed, is to, okay, let's base the protection. So R5 on the most interior 5, but notice by switching your characters defensively, that's a tough task. Because if you're not giving the back to this guy, you only got 2 other options from an offensive standpoint. You give your running back the dude who's dead over the midline, right on top of the center. That could be some bad math, and they know it. Or the lone other non-defensive line body type. The problem here from their side of it is he's not on an edge. So theory being he'd be taking his side, full line slide. The running back would take the non-defensive line character to his side off the edge, or have to scan. Problem is he's scanning to an interior located linebacker body type. That's, of course, if they're not being what I would find foolish, I would hope we'd agree, be pretty foolish to say, hey, you 2 block these 2, and we 3, let's go block these 3 and just leave this dude alone to go right up the middle. So just to make sure we're talking through scenarios, if this, then that, seeing the equivalent look. That's a good one. I'm keeping this one on, and feel free to scribe away, because as you notice, you could create families of these. You could create packages of these. Better yet, you don't necessarily have to rush all 5. You with me, gentlemen? So I'll leave it there just the last few seconds here before we wipe the board clean, because There's a lot of mileage. This is just one photograph.
Sorry, Coach. So there's a question here in the chat. It says, what about offenses that deal with pressure by releasing more receivers, looking for mismatches?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer with my gut DNA instinct. I'm glad you asked such a question. So they're going to line up in empty. Great. And I'm really going to generic this thing down. Great. You want to get everybody out there? Be my guest. Get the ball out in 1.5 seconds or less. We're going to bring one more than you have to block. And that I'm being super generic here. That's far from literal. But my goodness, please line up in empty. I beg you, please. I think you already see a little bit of the DNA bleeding out here. And obviously, I'm not making it any secret. This is live for the internet. NSIC, empty, cover zero's coming. So might as well start getting your shot clock ready for your quarterbacks right now.
What about those teams that motion to empty, Coach? You've got your play called and they motion to empty. What are your checks, or do you stick with it?
Long and short, great question. Long and short, they show a one back set, they motion to empty. So just to draw the concept to it, right? Twofold. If we want to keep the pressure on, one of our elements has to go mark and reflect the back. So most commonly, let's really drill it down. Let's just say we're playing cover one. Any of our true man coverages, not pressure zone, but pressure man, peel rules are attached to our edge players. Typically, generally speaking, whether that is a big man or not. So big men are going to be taught, hey, immediate release or pre-snap motion. If it's pre-snap motion, let me backtrack. Pre-snap motion, big guys stay to the rush. Little guy, go out and mark and reflect the back. If it's an at the snap release, an immediate flare, peel rules get attached to any of our man coverage calls. Yes. Great question.
Well, I think that's it as far as questions to this point there. Shep, coaches, if you got anything else, go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute yourself. But I think this has been awesome.
Good stuff. Well, I've had a blast. Always have a blast with you guys. Appreciate all of you guys making time on a Thursday night to jump in and get convo. Oh, I like that picture.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Coach, for your time.
No, thank you guys. I would love to do that to protection schemes.
Thanks, Mike. That was great. Really enjoyed it.
I have just a general question.
Sure.
What level do you think this would be good at? Like, in high school, you could implement some of it, I'd think, definitely. But, I mean, to really get into it, it has to be post-secondary, I would think, right?
Let's reduce it. That's a great question. Let's reduce it to lowest common denominator. Let's go high school. Better yet, let's go pre-high school. I think what we began with tonight, with those complex of those 5-man 3-2 configuration pressure schemes, shoot, I'd be running that till the cows come home with single digit, meaning under 10 years old level football. I mean, I think those can be taught. I think those can be, more importantly, repped.
Yeah.
Be repped to where it becomes muscle memory. They're all working together. You're creating also multitudes of different characters. What I mean by that is not every time am I the guy lining up on the center. You could create multitudes of your personnel with young kids to where they understand, hey, look, it's 5 of us. We know it's going to be those 5 big dudes who are going to block us, but now it's their problem on how they block us, because we're playing the game so fast. We're able to, I heard this in one of the other Zoom clinics this off season, you're able to just turn your brain off because your muscle memory now, like it's the Navy SEALs analogy. We've done this thing so many times, we can't screw it up. We have no way. There is no, it's so foolproofed. We've done it so many times. I think those have so much merit for youth football, and it creates such an identity piece, I think, too, for your players and for your guys on defense, that we're coming and it's on them. It is their problem to have to block us. We are coming. We're like a locomotive. We're like 5 locomotives. And the biggest thing is we just got to learn how to play well together. And so I think to myself, line up 5 trash cans, 5 trash buckets as the offensive line. And I mean, you could just have your entire practice period, your entire indie period, however much time you're allowed, and you're just rolling waves of guys. Hey, the lone rule we have, don't line up in the same spot twice or consecutively. And you're creating just a nice little, I call it almost like an arm of the military, like a little army, a little cell, of just guys who are just playing together, playing fast, and just hair on fire level of tempo and speed. And just those, I think those have a lot of merit. The last example, I obviously tried to, piecemeal tonight's talk to, advance as we go. Probably would be a struggle, to get into peel rules, motion adjustments, right? The younger you go. I also am leery to ever put a lid or a stop sign to any player's learning, right? It's just, I would always suggest, whether you're teaching peewee, teaching, for me, college age kids, 18 to 23 years old. I was in the CFL for 8 of the last 11 years. I'm teaching grown adult men. The fewer things you do, the fewer plays, but you just keep doing them over and over and over again. Create muscle memory. Do a few things extraordinarily well with a high rep count, because with a high rep count and rep equity equals a high execution rate. Just 411 that I've gathered along the way, and I feel it embodies how I believe, kind of what makes up my football DNA.
That's fantastic, Shep. Maybe one last one here, just kind of in general. How often do you include your defensive backfield in your pressures?
Great question. Here, for example, at Minot State, after having gone through virtual spring ball, not because I have the data sheet in front of me, but if I just loosely go back through my mental catalog, I would say our 3rd level players are roughly between no more than half your pressures, I would say, for just speaking about us, but a good chunk. So somewhere between a quarter and a third of our pressure package involves our 3rd level element players. And so to piggyback or just, put the full depth of the detail of that, if you're going to include your 3rd level players as a, let's call it lowest common denominator, say a 4th of your blitzes, a 4th of your pressures involve your 3rd level players, make sure you're devoting enough practice, indie, and group time to the how, meaning give them baseline competencies of how to rush a passer. Not because we happen to be friends, but because the content is outstanding. Go take them through Dave Jackson's pass rush cut up and teach your safeties, your halfbacks, your corners on just how to execute a hoop drill. So just 1 or 2 things. 2 is the absolute max for your 3rd level players. Just enough to give them a baseline competency of, okay, that's great, I'm fearless. I'm going to go dive up in there into an A or B gap. And then what? You don't want your players, if you're going to include your third level guys, you don't want them knowing what to do, but then not having at least one or two tool belt items to be able to do something with it, to execute the how. So great question. Yeah.
Sorry, Coach. Real quick. In your 5-man box 3-2, would you consider the outside linebackers or anybody outside that box a third level player?
Yes, on those examples.
Okay. Thank you.
And super specific to it, that's if you're in 3-2 personnel, right? So not to beat it up too bad, but those examples, yes, those are 3-2 looks and specific to 3-2 personnel. Keep that part in mind. If you have a third linebacker in the game with a 3-down line front, he's not a third level player most commonly.
All right, Coach Shep, I think we're good for tonight, brother. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time and walking us through some things. I think there's a lot of value there. Coaches, you can go ahead and review this on the YouTube page. Make sure you share it with your staff, have some conversations about it. Hopefully it digs up some more ideas and you guys can start working on your own playbook there. But I want to thank everybody and I love getting here, getting better together, and happy to serve the coaches in the area. So Coach Shep, to you and your staff, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you all. Appreciate it. It was awesome. I had a blast.
Thanks, Coach.